Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what it means? What's the difference between clinical and forensic psychology?
Forensic would be people who primarily specialize in court-related matters. The only experience I have in forensic is with custody conciliation and custody visitation work.
Okay. So the majority of your practice would have been exclusively clinical psychology as a general clinical psychologist?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Chicago, a master's from Duke University, and a doctorate from Northwestern University.
Okay. And how long did you practice, sir?
I practiced for approximately 10 years in Chicago and Illinois, where I was a licensed psychologist, and 30 years in South Florida.
Okay, so for a total
As a Florida licensed psychologist as well.
So you have about 40 years of clinical psychology experience?
Yes.
And you said the primary population was families and children?
Yes.
And did you provide individual counseling services to children?
Individual, families, marital.
I'd like to draw your attention to April 4th of 2007. So I know that that's a while ago. We're all mindful that there has been a lapse in time since you saw Nikolas Cruz, but do you remember Nikolas Cruz being one of your patients?
Yes.
Do you remember the length of services, the length of time he was with you?
Looking at the record as I did, there were about 15 sessions over 13 months.
Okay.
During the time when he was 8 to 9 years old, an 8-year-old in first grade when I first saw him.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a moment, please?
You may.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
You may.
Dr. Kravitz, I'm going to show you some documents.
Okay.
Can you please tell me if you recognize those documents?
Yes, this is the intake form that was used when Nikolas first came in with his mother.
Can you glance through the notes without telling anybody what it is, just to see if you recognize those documents?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yes, this is the whole clinical.
And the notes that you just reviewed, would they have been, would you have memorialized the meetings that you had with the Cruz family?
Yes.
Either contemporaneously or shortly thereafter?
Correct.
Okay. And you've had an opportunity to review the clinical
Yes, I
file?
have.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense would seek to introduce 1T as a composite. It also includes the business record certification and authenticity.
Does the state have any objection?
No objection.
Okay, without objection, defense 1T for identification will be received as 33. Thank you.
While that's being marked by the clerk, I'm just going to ask you some general questions.
Okay.
When there's a new patient that arrives at your office, is there a procedure that you follow, documents that have to be filled out?
Yes, well, for a child, the parent fills out the intake form with a little bit of a history, presenting reasons, and some demographic information as well.
Okay. So this intake form provides you with some initial information in which you can start building?
That is correct.
Okay. So why is that important? Why is the intake form important?
Well, it gives you some idea of who you're dealing with, where they come from, what the presenting issues are.
And do you have those documents in front of you as well, sir? You have your clinical file?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to pull up some documents.
Okay.
And let me know if you can see this. It's composite of Defense Exhibit 33. Okay. What is this document, sir?
Yeah, that would be the initial page that Linda Cruz filled out when she and Nikolas came in on September 24th, that's his date of birth, I'm sorry, 4/26/2007.
Okay. And there's just some general information here, including insurance information.
Correct.
And presentment. If you look at the very bottom, it says, presenting problem.
I think that's what it is, yes, at the bottom.
And that indicates what?
She said just anxious at that point.
And when you initially reviewed the intake form, because you obviously didn't do it, do you make a recommendation as for how often the family should come to you and receive services?
Well, you do your initial workup, and depending on the presenting problem and the people involved, yes, you do some idea of when you want to see them.
Okay. And on this document, there's a question that said, can patient be seen 2 times per week? Do you see where it says that?
Yes.
Okay. And there's an indication that the patient could be seen 2 times a week?
Right. That would be with the insurance.
Okay.
That's part of the insurance information. If necessary, they can be seen more than once a week.
Okay. Was there any other documentation that would have been filled out by the parent prior to the initial session?
Yes, the other pages.
Okay, and that's the...
Oh, actually, I apologize. This was filled in by my secretary when they called
Okay.
and set up the appointment.
Okay, so I'm going to show you this parent identification form.
Yes, that would be the paperwork that Linda filled out,
Okay, so
Mrs. Cruz.
This would have been her actual handwriting.
Yes.
Okay, so how much do you rely on the information that the parent gives you in making some determinations as to what services you'll provide?
Well, it's initial baseline, and you really don't know much about who you're dealing with till someone tells you something.
So it gives you a baseline.
Yes,
So you have to rely on the information that you're provided.
correct.
Okay. So here, this is just some kind of general information in terms of patient information and the child's information. And it appears here that Ms. Cruz was referred to you by someone else.
Yes, Dr. Stephen Moskowitz. He was the treating child psychiatrist.
Did you ever have any communications with Dr.
Yes,
Moskowitz?
I spoke to him a couple of times prior to him coming in as well.
And is that kind of standard practice as a result of a referral that you reach out to the...
Sometimes it's ideal, but doesn't always happen.
Okay, but in this case, it did happen?
Yes.
So this is page 2 of that questionnaire. And number 1 indicates this is the mom advising you what she believes the major problems and what she's seeking help for.
Correct.
And can you tell me what it says there?
I'm sorry?
Under number 1, does it appear to you that the major problems according to...
Anxiety, nervous temper.
Okay. And then she indicates that this behavior has been occurring once a year?
1
For the
year.
last year? I apologize.
Yeah, 1 year.
And there's also an indication that he is receiving some additional services, or at some point had received some services from Dr. Moskowitz, correct?
Correct.
And then once again, she indicates what led them to seek services: anxiety, lack of temper, control in school.
Yes.
And then she provides you with some additional information that he has a family counselor at his elementary school, correct?
Correct.
All this information is important to you. Why?
It gives me some idea of what's going on, who's involved in the case.
And then mom fills out, this is mom's, what she sees as the problems that...
Correct.
Or in the school or in general. And what would those issues be? Can you just read them off, the ones that are checked?
Yes, the ones that are checked. Difficulty concentrating, trouble with memory, unreasonable fears, anxious and tense, angry, act before thinking, school problems, loss of appetite.
Okay. And then the pediatrician, his name is also indicated, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you, as a clinical psychologist, you don't actually prescribe medication, is that correct?
Correct.
Is it important for you to know what medication your patients are on?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if there's any changes in the medication, is it important that you're aware of that?
Correct.
Okay. So at the time of this intake, there's an indication that Nikolas was receiving 54 milligrams of Concerta.
Yes.
Now, if you don't
May I
feel
just
comfortable...
object to
meeting if you could.
All right, so we're just going to hit pause as the defense continues their case in the Parkland school shooter's penalty phase. We're going to bring you back into court live as it resumes. Want to say thank you to Bernarda Villalona for joining us with analysis. We're going to continue our coverage right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Eat now.
Welcome to Court TV Live. I'm Joy Lim-Nakran in for Ted Rollins this morning. We're covering two trials here at Court TV this morning. In Florida, testimony is underway in the penalty phase for Parkland school shooter Nikolas Cruz. The jury will decide if Cruz will be sentenced to death or life without the possibility of parole for killing 14 students and 3 staff members in 2018. We are also following the Ohio trial for defendant Matthew Moore. Court TV is bringing you this trial streaming on CourtTV.com. Moore is accused of killing his wife, Emily Noble, but staging it to look like a suicide. The state is expected to rest their case in chief today. So I want to get you back into court now in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for the Nikolas Cruz case. On the stand right now is Dr. Frederick Kravitz. He's a clinical psychologist who began meeting with Cruz when he was 8 years old.
Can you please read question number 3 and how it was answered?
How would you characterize your child's health? Excellent.
And number 4, is there any indication under that question?
No, none.
Okay. And how about number 5 and 6?
No and no.
Okay, now we're going to go to page 5. Base stamp page 5, Mr. Marcus. What is interpersonal history? What does that mean?
How he deals with other people.
You able to see that okay? Okay. And the first question?
How does your child relate to peers? She said okay.
And then number 2?
Is your child basically, she said friendly.
Okay. And then she indicates number 3. Go ahead and read the question and the answer.
I'm sorry, number 3.
Yes, sir.
Outdoor play and TV.
Did it appear from this intake form that he was involved in any clubs or teams or organizations?
No.
And number 5?
She said no to child social activities.
Is there any indication that she answered number 6? If you could read that question, please.
No, she didn't.
And did you ever ask her about that particular question in any other form during your sessions?
Yes, she said he was, could be sweet and affectionate.
And number 7?
She was concerned with temper, loss of control of his temper, anxiety, particularly in school.
And then 8, his response as to how she deals with those behaviors?
Right, we talked about the issue.
And then number 9, how he responds to discipline?
Okay.
Okay. And then as we go through the educational history, she indicates some of his strengths and weaknesses academically. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And number 4, so now you know him when he comes into you as a first grader, correct?
Correct.
And she indicates to you what about his school performance in number 4?
Yes, that it's changed and it's much better.
And why is it important for you to know if a student is receiving any type of special needs or special education services? Why is that important?
Well, gives you some idea of what the challenges are, what the issues are with the child.
And then 6, did she advise you whether or not Nikolas had ever repeated a grade?
Yes, he had repeated the cluster program for kindergarten.
I'm sorry, repeated?
The cluster program for kindergarten.
Thank you. Do you know what the cluster program is?
Yes, it's for children with emotional and behavioral difficulties. Typically, the logic is it's a very small classroom. I think at one point, it could have been with Nikolas, but I won't promise. There was a teacher, an aide, and 4 students. So it's almost basically a one-on-one intervention for kids who can't be contained in a regular classroom.
Okay. And then there's some questions about whether or not he's been suspended or expelled, and there's an indication of suspension. Would you agree?
Right, he was suspended once for a day in January of 2007.
Okay, and then number 10, how does Ms. Cruz describe his behavior?
Sometimes aggressive and anxious. He's very sensitive.
And then page 6 of your report,
Yes.
family history. Why is it important to know patient's family history?
Well, we want to know, certainly from a genetic standpoint, what's involved and what the gene pool is like.
And what about whether or not the mother had received any prenatal care? Would that matter to you?
Of course,
Tell us why, please.
because obviously it's very important for the adequate development of the fetus, and certainly it's affected by many factors, both physiological and environmental.
And what other information would you want to know about the pregnancy? Or one of your patients?
Well, it would have been nice if she pointed out the adoption and the history of the birth mother.
Okay.
She did mention some of that in the interview, but it's not down on these notes.
Okay, so do you remember any conversation that you had with her about adoption?
Yes, I knew that Nikolas had been adopted. I knew that they'd also adopted his younger brother, Zachary, from the same woman, that they were probably half siblings. I knew that the mother had some issues with substance abuse and probably some psychiatric issues as well.
Why is that important for you to know, sir?
Because obviously the fetus can be affected by the various things going on in terms of development. For example, we know smoke is harmful to a fetus, but we also know that drugs are even more harmful, as well as alcohol and other stimulants. And we know some of the medication that's prescribed by the physician can also be harmful.
There is some information about the child's parent, and at this time when Nikolas is 8 years old, how old is his mother, Linda Cruz?
7.
Pardon?
I'm sorry, how old was his?
His adoptive mother.
Oh, she
Number
would have
2?
been 57.
Okay. And she was a homemaker, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they also indicate that the document also indicates that he has a brother. And how was the relationship with the brother, Zachary?
Their relationship was rather tumultuous.
Is that unusual for two boys that are close in age?
Not at all unusual. They probably raised it to an art form.
I'm sorry, sir?
They raised it to an art form. I think
Art
that
form?
art form. Nikolas was very easily set off, and I think Zachary derived some pleasure from doing so. Zachary was basically the more functional of the brothers, but he seemed to derive some pleasure from pushing Nikolas's buttons.
Now, the last question on this document is please list other pertinent information not previously asked. And that's left empty, correct?
Correct.
But would you have obtained some other pertinent information, like with the
If
comp-based
she
on it?
volunteered it, yes.
Okay, and would that be the information that you just told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about the adoption and?
Yes.
And then what was your initial recommendation for treatment?
Well, can I start with my initial impressions of Nikolas? Is that?
Let me back you up first.
Okay.
Doctor, sorry about that. Can you tell me about the referral and what information you were provided from Dr. Moskowitz as to?
Primarily that he was being treated for an attention deficit disorder, and there was a lot of conduct disorder as well.
I'm sorry?
A lot of conduct disorder as well.
Okay. And what is conduct disorder? Tell the ladies and gentlemen about
Sure.
that.
Conduct disorder would be a variety of things. In Nikolas's cases, it would be his acting out, having tantrums, anger outbursts, low frustration tolerance, refusal to do things, running away at times.
And The referral, did it include any other requests for services or anything that Dr. Moskowitz believed that the family needed?
Well, I think the implication was to help him both with his attention span and his anger control, and primarily to work with mom to be more consistent in her discipline of the child, and to hopefully model for him some more appropriate behavior.
Okay. So that's the kind of the referral question, and then you
Correct.
start your services. Did you believe that Ms. Cruz needed some assistance in parenting skills, or?
Oh, absolutely.
And tell me what you mean by that. What do you think she could have benefited from, on what you were trying to do?
I think she truly loved these boys, but I do think she was overwhelmed in caring for them and somewhat depressed since her husband had passed away 2 or 3 years before I saw Nikolas, which left her as a single parent to 2 very out-of-control children.
Okay. Did she seem receptive to your suggestions?
She was receptive, but she was very private. She felt that people had already been judging her a great deal, and she was a little bit skittish. So I spent a lot of time trying to develop a closer relationship with her and try to reassure her that I was not being judgmental, that these were very difficult boys. But I think she also had some anger issues.
And did you
Anger issues, just as the boys push each other's buttons, they were very good at pushing hers as well.
Okay. Did she ever talk to you about how she dealt with those anger issues?
Yes, but I'm not sure how accurate that was.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure how accurate what she described was. My sense of it is she lost her cool frequently
Okay.
and backed down a great deal, gave in to the boys, which only made the situation much worse.
Okay. So can you tell me if there's some overwhelming, like what's the best way to ensure that there's going to be some success in treatment? Are there any particular factors that contribute to whether or not there's progress or a lack of progress?
Probably patients' motivation and the relationship you build with them. Obviously, in a young child, it will be all through the parent or parents, pretty much. Unfortunately, with Linda, I don't feel we were terribly successful.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, with Linda.
Some water?
Yes, that would help.
All right, so you're hearing that testimony from a psychologist in the penalty phase for Parkland school shooter Nikolas Cruz. We're just going to take a brief break, but we're going to take you back into court where we're leaving off here on Court TV.
There's blood all over the house.
A senseless tragedy in small-town America.
This was a pre-planned execution.
It was a feud between families that ended with multiple murders.
Came in like thieves in the night and took 8 lives.
George Wagner faces murder charges in connection with the killing.
Wagner's brother and parents also charged.
It's very much a family affair. All for one, one for all.
It's a chilling story. It will be an intense trial.
The Ohio Family Massacre Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning on Court TV.
On Court TV, testimonies underway this morning in the penalty phase for the Parkland school shooter. A Florida jury is soon going to be tasked with deciding whether it should be a life sentence or the death penalty for the 23-year-old Nikolas Cruz. He killed 14 high school students and 3 teachers and injured dozens more back in 2018. This morning, the jury is hearing about Cruz when he was 8 years old. And on the stand now is psychologist Dr. Frederick Kravitz, who treated Cruz back then. Let's get you back into the courtroom right where we left off.
The question is, so can you tell me if there's overwhelming ... what's the best way to ensure there's some success in treatment? Are there any particular factors that contribute, whether there's progress or a lack of progress?
Yes, that would be the motivation of the patient or the parent, as well as the nature of the relationship you have with the parent or the patient.
Okay. Who did you spend more time with during your services?
Probably more with mom than with Nikolas.
Okay. Why is that?
Because it was very important that whatever techniques I was trying to teach Nikolas, mother was aware of them and could practice at home. There's only so much you can do in an office within a session.
So you have this session and you teach mom skills?
I would see mom first. She would give me an update on what was going on for a period of time. Usually I'd put Nick in the playroom while I was with mom, so he'd keep his hands busy pretty much. And depending how that goes, then I would go in and see Nikolas as well. You do that because, number one, you want to have some update of what's been going on in the family. And number two, particularly with older kids, usually adolescents, you don't want to necessarily be meeting with the parent afterwards and have the kid feel that you're spilling whatever they confided in you.
Okay. So during those sessions with Ms. Cruz, were you trying to give her some interventions or some strategies to deal with?
Yes, we talked about consistent discipline. We talked about using appropriate rewards. We talked about not overreacting to things. We talked about modeling what we call I feel statements, trying to get Nick to articulate his feelings in words a little bit better and not in actions, not acting them out quite so directly. We taught some strategies to do that. It was modeled for Mom, and the goal was for her to follow through with Nick and practice at home. And then I would practice with Nick in the session as well.
So obviously you were never in the Cruz home, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you get the impression based on Nikolas's behavior when you met with him and Mom's responsiveness that those interventions and those strategies were being used at home?
I don't think they were very much. Okay. I think she'd throw up her hands too readily.
Just kind of give up, overwhelmed
Yes.
and frustrated? Okay.
And again, I'd stress these were very difficult children.
You just made some references to teaching Nikolas I feel statements. What's the purpose behind that?
Well, because whenever Nikolas got frustrated or angry, he'd lash out. He'd throw something, he'd hit something, he'd tear something up, whatever. The goal of I feel statements is to identify how you feel, articulate your feelings, share it with someone, and hopefully be able to express it without the aggression that was so prevalent with him.
So during the 13 months that you worked with Nikolas, how did that progress, working on the I feel statements? Was he able to identify his emotions?
To a minimal amount. As I said, the sessions were too far apart to really do what we wanted to get done. And initially, I think they were every couple of weeks, and then it was once a month or even a couple of months between sessions. Very hard to accomplish very much in that.
So what was your recommendation in terms of how many times his Cruz?
Ideally, I would have liked to have seen him at least once a week for a while.
Okay. So we're talking ideally, if you saw him over 13 months, maybe excluding some holidays, probably 52 sessions, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you remember how many sessions Linda and Nikolas had?
15.
Okay. Did you ever have any conversations with Ms. Cruz about the, would you consider that consistency in treatment?
Very difficult to treat under those circumstances.
Did you ever have any conversations with Ms. Cruz about that?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us about those conversations, please?
Generally, I just pointed out to her that if we were going to make progress, we needed more consistency. To the best of my recollection, she would say, yeah, and nothing would really change.
So let's talk about the sessions you did have with Nikolas. What was some of the behavior that you observed, some of the conversations that you had?
Well, Nikolas was a very peculiar little child. He was 8. He probably acted like he was maybe 6 at the most. I was aware of the fact Mom had mentioned that he'd been even more problematic as a little child. And she felt that he'd made some gains, problematic though he continued to be. A lot of psychopathology, anxious, tense, short attention span, at times a little bit hyper, obviously aggressive. What am I leaving out? Fearful at times, rather withdrawn.
Let's talk about being withdrawn and fearful. First, withdrawn. In engaging with Nikolas, do you believe that he struggled with social skills and communication with other people?
Yes.
Okay. How was his eye contact?
How
was his eye contact when he spoke to you?
It was hard to get him to look at me initially. Oftentimes with young kids, we'll give them a toy or something to play with while we're talking, especially for ADD kids. It keeps them occupied a little bit better, so that helps. The eye contact, I think, improved a little bit, but wasn't what you would normally see.
So lack of eye contact is not something you normally see with children that are diagnosed with ADHD?
Not to this extent. Okay. A little bit worse than the norm, certainly.
So what did that lead you to believe?
that he was withdrawn. I thought he certainly showed some autistic tendencies, but that wasn't full-blown by any means. Mom had also pointed out to me that Nick had been much worse when he was younger. The behavior was much more infantile. So the hope was that we were dealing with a developmental delay, and with treatment and over time, things would improve.
Okay. So you said autism. Did you diagnose him with autism?
No.
Okay.
But he had some autistic qualities.
Like what?
The withdrawal, the isolation, the lack of interaction. On the other hand, you're dealing with a young child. You're also dealing with a child who I knew stuck out like a sore thumb, had been bullied, had problems with other kids. As I said, I think his brother was pushing his buttons all the time as well. So there were behavioral or environmental reasons why he would be somewhat withdrawn as well.
When you say he stuck out like a sore thumb, what does that mean?
I'm sorry?
With the other children, you said he stuck out like a sore thumb?
Yeah.
What about him?
He looked peculiar, he acted peculiar.
Okay. And then did you make any physical observations of Nikolas over 13 months that you met with him in terms of how his development appeared when compared to children his same age?
I think he looked and acted much younger than his stated age.
Okay. So what were some of the things that you were working on when you were with Nikolas? What were some of the sessions focused on?
The same things we mentioned with Mom, working on anger management, working on expressing his feelings using words, as well as trying to build a better relationship between him and I.
And you mentioned earlier that Nikolas was very worrisome and had a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
Were you ever able to determine the source of either of those two things? Or
well, I think there was a palpable fear of abandonment, which was probably related to, number one, the fact that his adopted father had passed away a couple of years before, and at least symbolically, the fact that he'd been adopted in the first place.
Now,
all right, this psychologist, a defense witness in the penalty phase for Parkland school shooter Nikolas Cruz, here testifying about some of his behavioral and psychological issues. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to bring you back into court where we're leaving off here on Court TV.
You don't want it.
Welcome back to Court TV. We continue our coverage of the sentencing phase for the Parkland school shooter, which is underway right now. Defendant Nikolas Cruz was 19 years old when he went on a shooting rampage in what proved to be one of the deadliest high school massacres in U.S. history. He pleaded guilty to 17 charges of first-degree murder and 17 charges of attempted murder. This morning, the defense has called a psychologist to the stand who treated Cruz when he was just 18 years old. Let's get you back into court right where we left off.
Now, do you know if Nikolas even knew at age 8 if he was adopted?
I don't know, but I suspect that he may very well have overheard people talking.
Okay.
Be it at the home, at school, or somewhere else.
And that sense of abandonment, you saw like a physical manifestation of that?
Well, I'm basing that primarily on a mother's report that he was extremely fearful she would forget to pick him up from school, and he'd be stranded there, and no one would come get him.
And how did Miss Linda Cruz respond to that fear that Nikolas?
She was perplexed by that because she always picks him up, and it shouldn't be an issue. And I tried explaining to her that no other people in his life have left, and it's natural to have that worry, offer reassurance, and don't be quite so perplexed by the fact that he has these fears. We also talked a little bit about imagination with children, and with young children, you talk about the good imagination, the bad imagination. To put it simply, the good imagination is creativity, writing a story, coming up with a new invention. The bad imagination would be imagine horrible things happen, or ghosts, monsters, all of those kinds of things.
So Nikolas had some bad imaginations.
He had a pretty active bad imagination.
Do you think that Linda was able to recognize Nikolas's emotions and connect with his emotions?
I think she mostly recognized the fact that he was angry, difficult to control, and making scenes in a variety of settings, and that embarrassed her greatly.
You think she was embarrassed by him?
Yes. I think the fact that she had two difficult children and they're always coming to some kind of attention for some misbehavior, yes, that embarrassed her a little bit. And I think that was also why it was hard to engage her in treatment. She felt it was hard to, that was also why it was hard to engage her in treatment. She felt that people had been judging her.
How, when you would speak with Nikolas, did he appear like he was listening to you and understanding the things you were saying to him?
Yeah, I think he went through the motions. We kept it pretty simple. He certainly wasn't disruptive one-on-one.
What does going through the motions mean?
Nodding his head, not disagreeing, repeating something I asked him to repeat.
When you were working with Nikolas, did you have to break things down into chunks in order for him to understand it?
Oh, yes, I kept it as simple as I could, very clearly, one thing at a time, a bit of practice. But again, the main goal was to get Mom to be on the same page, same wavelength, and to practice for many, many times at home.
Now, I know you never did any IQ testing, but obviously with your years of experience in working with children, did it appear that Nikolas was at all intellectually impaired?
No, I thought he was probably somewhere in the average range. And as I said, he seemed to have improved, as Mom said in her paperwork, from a younger age till now. So hopefully it would be a developmental delay, and over time he would continue to progress.
Do you believe, based on the things that Mom told you and the behaviors that she was observing, that there was structure in the home?
Minimal structure.
Okay. And is that important for a child who has...
Absolutely. You need a schedule, you need structure. I mean, otherwise it's a bit of a free-for-all, and that was my sense of what was going on over there.
So tell me how important consistency in treatment is for any of your patients, not just children.
Well, consistency is important because you want to work the issues out. You want to, especially with children, you want to practice and you want to see some results. And as I said, normally, had there been a shorter interval between sessions, I'd had a clear idea what was going on. When it was 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes the beginning of the session was strictly updating what had been happening in the last few weeks. And when that happens, you don't get very far.
Did you get any sense of, was there any pattern as to when Linda would show up, bring Nikolas in for meetings?
Yeah, I thought it was, I had a sense that it was when something had happened or someone was pushing her to bring him in.
So you were aware that he was diagnosed with ADHD?
Yes.
And so, it's your understanding that he was medicated or on medication throughout the time that he was with you?
Yes.
Okay. Were you updated on the medication either?
Yes, it was changed 2 or 3 times in the time I saw him.
And do you know why that was?
Typically, the psychiatrists change. I mean, the only way to know if it's effective medication is the behavior, how they're doing in the classroom, how they're doing at home. The other problem you have with stimulant medication, and most ADHD medication is stimulant medication, the problem you have is it causes a little more irritability, emotionality, sometimes some sleep issues as well, because basically it's a stimulant that you're taking. It's something that would otherwise keep people awake for a long time. And the theory is that in ADHD children, it has a paradoxical effect of calming them down. And the theory that I was taught, and I think it's still the current theory, is that attention deficit kids have a very high need for stimulation. So there are 2 ways to stimulate a child. One would be externally, give them games, let them run around, all kinds of prizes, contests, whatever. And the second is to give them a stimulant medication, which seems to paradoxically calm them down because their mind is at the level of stimulation that they crave. And typically they get bored easily and then they get restless.
So based on the review of your records, Nikolas's medication, was he on the same medication the entire time you were providing him services?
No, he was on 3 different stimulant medications, I believe.
And that's just trying to figure out what works?
Correct. And also minimize the side effects, like I was mentioning. Because some of these symptoms he had could also be related both to the ADHD as well as to the medication. In other words, these kids sometimes have memory issues because they're not paying attention. That would be one thing, certainly, as well as the irritability goes up with the stimulant medication as well. The problem is in a classroom trying to learn, it's a rather slow, tedious environment, especially for ADHD kids.
So do you agree with the diagnosis of ADHD at that time?
Yes.
But you saw other symptomology that wasn't consistent with ADHD,
Correct.
correct? And I think you described that he's not autistic but had autistic features, correct?
Correct.
And you also mentioned oppositional conduct disorder.
Right.
And that's associated with the aggressiveness, right?
Right.
Okay. So was it that is it like a cluster of symptomology? You couldn't really put your finger on it?
Yes. And to give Nikolas the benefit of that, when he was 8 and was acting like he was 6, like I said, the hope was that it was a developmental delay, and over time, these things would improve.
Okay. So, understanding that you would have liked to have seen the Cruz family more, in the 13 sessions that you did have with them, how would you describe Linda's progress as a parent?
Minimum. I didn't really see a whole lot of gains.
I'm sorry?
I didn't see a whole lot of gains. It would go in little periods. If it was quieter with the kids, she was feeling a little better. If the kids were acting out more, she was obviously feeling worse.
And what about Nikolas's progress?
Not very much.
And you mentioned the challenge of both boys. Did you see Zachary at all?
Zachary came in a couple of times with Nikolas, so I observed them together, but no, he wasn't my patient. As I said, from what I could see and from what I was told, Zach was younger, but he looked older, he acted older, and he was somewhat of the better child, but he was also a tremendous instigator behind the scenes.
So, even though you did not diagnose with Nikolas as autism, but rather he had some symptomology consistent with that, were there any additional services that could have helped him with his lack of social skills and the anxiousness and the self-isolation?
Well, if treatment had been more intense, we could have addressed some of those things as well.
Okay. And what about the information that Mom had told you about the exposure to drugs and alcohol in utero, those toxins? I know you're not an expert in fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, but is there anything, if you had been able to identify that or if he had been properly diagnosed, that you could have done?
Well, when we talk about developmental delays, which would certainly apply to Nikolas, there are many reasons that can cause it. One would be the substance abuse, but there's also varying degrees. It would depend on what drugs were used, how much they were used, what the point was in terms of fetal development. So clearly the fact that he was an average intelligence and able to comprehend things, we were hopeful that with treatment he would continue to improve. It wouldn't be a major issue.
And when you see a patient as a general clinical psychologist, do you ever make referrals when you have all the information that you need from a family and the consistency in treatment if you think that there's something else that they may need? Well,
I had suggested on numerous occasions that Linda get some help herself. Okay. I felt she was still very depressed, mourning her husband, feeling overwhelmed, loving the boys, but in some ways regretting having made this commitment, not knowing how difficult it would be.
What about for Nikolas?
I'm sorry?
What about for Nikolas? Would you have the ability, if you had all the information that you needed, to make referrals?
I don't remember making any referral. I made some suggestions to Mom to get him involved in some social activities to increase some of his social skills. But given the level of motivation, I couldn't imagine them seeing other practitioners on a consistent basis.
Do you think that Linda Cruz loved her boys?
Yes, no doubt about that.
Do you think she did everything that she could do for her boys?
In her mind, yes.
May I have a moment, please, Your Honor?
You may.
All right, while she takes that moment, we're going to take a moment to step aside briefly, but we're going to bring you back into court where we are leaving off in the penalty phase for Parkland school shooter Nikolas Cruz. So keep it right here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV. We continue our coverage now of the sentencing phase for the Parkland school shooter, which is underway right now. Defendant Nikolas Cruz has pleaded guilty to 17 counts of first-degree murder and attempted murder for those 17 lives that he took on Valentine's Day at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School back in 2018. The defense continues to journey back into Cruz's childhood, and on the stand right now is Dr. Frederick Kravitz, who served as the defendant's psychologist starting when he was just 8 years old. Let's take you back into court right where we left off.
I think in your notes, and we can go through them if you want, but if you remember and they're in front of you, and the jury will have an opportunity to read the individual notes, and you have the typical doctor handwriting. You indicated something about symptoms of a mood disorder with Nikolas. What does that mean?
A mood disorder?
Yeah, potential mood disorder. What is that?
Well, a mood disorder would be anxiety or depression or mood disorders.
Is it difficult to diagnose children with a mood disorder at 8?
No, sometimes it's pretty clear-cut.
Okay.
But like I said, with Nikolas, there were so many things going on simultaneously.
Okay. And what is your recollection why Linda adopted the boys? Did you ever have a conversation with her about that?
About why she adopted the boys?
Yes.
We talked about it. To the best of my recollection, I got a sense, I'm not sure I'm correct, that, and this may be revisionist history, that Linda felt that it had been her late husband who had kind of suggested this, and she went along with it. And given his demise and how difficult the children were, she regretted that decision.
When Linda came to you, she was 57 years old. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you think that her age had anything to do with parenting?
It didn't help.
Why not?
Because I think your stamina, your ability to handle these things, I mean, it's like the families I work with where grandparents have had to raise their grandchildren because the parents are not available for one reason or another. That's always very difficult.
And how important is it for a caregiver, whoever, that's a grandparent or a mom or a dad, to have a good, solid support system?
That's very important, especially when you have this difficult a situation.
And do you believe that Linda Cruz had a support system at home, or?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.